Prime Minister, you've just arrived at the G20, your first big international summit after COP27. What do you hope to achieve here?
Well, it's great to be at the G20 summit here in Indonesia. I think in the wake of COVID and Russia's war, many countries around the world are facing similar economic challenges to us at home. So it will be good to discuss with other leaders how we can fix the global economy. Of course, I'm also going to take this opportunity to condemn Russia's illegal, hostile activity in Ukraine. And lastly, I'm looking forward to sitting down and building some strong relationships with other leaders like President Biden from America and the Prime Ministers of Japan, Australia and India.
And maybe China. Maybe President Xi.
Yes, President Xi is here, and like all the other leaders, hopefully I will have a chance to talk to him too.
And Prime Minister, you've said you will call out Putin and call out the war in Ukraine, but President Xi and PM Modi won't, will they?
Well, I'm going to use this opportunity to unequivocally condemn Russia's hostile and illegal war in Ukraine, and I know that other allies will as well, because it's right that we highlight what is going on and hold Russia to account for that, and I won't shy away from doing that.
But you accept that there will be no condemnation of this war from the G20 in a communique, will there? You cannot get everyone to agree, can you?
Yeah, the G20 is a very different forum to the G7, for example. You know, the G7 is a group of like-minded liberal democracies with similar values. The G20, we have to acknowledge, is a different grouping, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be engaged in it, we shouldn't make our voices heard, and constructively work with people where we can to make a difference for people at home as well. And you saw that recently when it came to migration. The ability to talk to other countries can have benefits for people at home, and that's what I'm here to deliver.
Well, let's just go on to people at home, because the economy, you said last night you have to follow through on tax rises and spending cuts later this week, because your government, and this is to quote you, has to meet the expectations of international markets and put public finances onto a sustainable footing. Have you had to make harder choices because of Liz Truss?
I think actually being here reminds everyone that the challenges that we face at home are global in nature. The global economy is recovering from COVID and dealing with the aftershocks.
There was a UK-specific
but also
reason
Russia's war in
though.
Ukraine is a primary driver for energy prices and inflation. And that's why the IMF has made the point that actually almost a third of the world's economy either is or will be in recession. So we're not alone in facing these challenges. I know other leaders here will be talking about how do we make sure that global economy is resilient to high inflation and rising interest rates. And what the Chancellor has rightly set out is that we will need to take some difficult decisions, but that's in order to limit the increase in mortgage rates, to get inflation down. Those are the right things to do, but we will have fairness and compassion at the heart of all of those decisions.
But Prime Minister, my question was, you do acknowledge that your predecessor made this harder because of the choices they made in the mini-budget?
Well,
yes
actually, I, on the steps of Downing Street, I said that mistakes had been made, and part of the reason that I became Prime Minister was to address them. And what we've seen now is that stability has returned to the United Kingdom, but that's because the expectation is that the government will make those difficult but necessary decisions to ensure that we can get a grip of inflation, reduce it for people with the cost of living, also limit the increase in mortgage rates. But I really want people to be reassured that what the Chancellor is working on is that all the decisions we make will have fairness and compassion at their heart, and I'm confident on Thursday people can see that that's what we've strived to do.
Fairness and compassion, a hint that you'll keep the triple lock. I'm not going to bother asking you because I know you won't answer that question, but what I will ask you is this. You're saying that you have to make hard economic choices to have sustainability of public finances, but the fallout for all of us is that they're going to be hard choices for our own finances, aren't there? For everyone around the country, it's going to be tough.
The Chancellor has set that out very recently indeed, and I think the right thing though is to be honest with the country, and we shouldn't pretend that there aren't some difficult choices ahead, because that's what's required to ensure that in the long term we can do the things that will benefit people's finances. Because if inflation gets out of control, that's not going to help anyone. If interest rates keep spiralling, that's not going to help anyone. But I'm confident that what the government will deliver on Thursday will be fair, it will be compassionate, it will deal with the challenges we face and put us on a path to recovery for the future.
Prime Minister, if I may, just final questions, a couple of questions on the UK-French deal that was announced today. You're making some progress, but numbers making the crossing over the channel now at a record high of over 40,000 people this year. Can you guarantee, as Prime Minister, that you will reduce this number next year?
I said last week that gripping illegal migration was an absolute priority for me. It's a thing I've spent most of my time on outside of the economy since I became Prime Minister. And I've also said, though, it's not an easy problem that you can solve with a single policy overnight. And that's why we need to work on lots of different things. I prioritised working with the French at the heart of that, because without their cooperation, it's hard for us to solve this problem. I spoke to President Macron about it when I first spoke to him. I further met with him and we went over it in more detail, and I'm pleased that as a result of that dialogue we now have a new deal with the French, which is going to mean 40% more patrols happening in France, and for the first time our officials embedded in their operations. That is going to make a difference, and hopefully people can see that that's the fruits of the work that I've been talking about, but there's more to come and people should know that.
My question was, can you guarantee that the numbers will fall next year?
No, I'm confident that we can get the numbers down, but I also want to be honest with people that it isn't a single thing that will magically solve this. We can't do it overnight, but people should be absolutely reassured that this is a top priority for me. I'm gripping it, and as I've said, in the time that I've been Prime Minister, you're already starting to see some progress with this deal with the French, but that's just a start. There's lots more that we need to do.
Final thought.